1, 2, 3, 4.
Great.
So now we're in sync. Lovely. Let me clear my throat. I got a little tray. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good.
Knowing about the history is political in a way because so many answers for like questions about what drag is supposed to do in society, I find answers for looking at the past. And
You know, it's so funny. There's all the people who I hear, not all of, but most of the people who I hear telling us what the drag is supposed to do or who's supposed to be doing it or what it's supposed to be are usually people who don't even do drag.
Why is that?
I don't know. What's your first like memory of like drag in a political sense and like, you know, seeing sort of like a radical idea of a drag performer or drag artist?
I mean, I think drag artists, just seeing people be queer publicly is radical, but it wasn't the real political meaning of it clicked reading about Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson and Stormy DeLarvery at the Stonewall. And I know I've talked about this a million times, but it's always important.
I think it's really interesting that, especially mirroring today, going back, and obviously I wasn't alive then, but like going back to try to put myself in the mind frame or the state of mind that they could have been in. It was honestly like sort of the perfect storm or like really perfect, impossible intersection of racism and socioeconomic disparities and, you know, sexism and also homophobia. They were able to use that, I think, as a power and a weapon to get back at them. I mean, like even literally taking off their heels and throwing them. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I mean, I think a lot of the people who led the riots actually hated the bar anyways, because the bar had real discriminatory door policies towards people who were in drag, especially towards Black people. It was like, even though it was kind of one of the few bars where you, I think, could be kind of more out, they still were racist and transphobic. So the people who were out there on the street were like, an opportunity to destroy this place. Like, let's have at it. I think that's the thing people forget too.
I think it's really interesting. All we have to do is look back to our history to see that queerness, although it is a minority, isn't necessarily treated the same when race is injected into it. And that you can be,
that's so important.
You know, race can be an issue. It is an issue. It always is an issue in this country. But racism can exist in places that are 100% gay or queer. Sexism and misogyny can exist and often does in places that are very queer. And so I think that's an important thing for us to kind of remember. There was sort of a notion at some point where we were all kind of lumped into the same thing. And that, you know, all of a sudden the arguments got boiled down to one issue, LGBTQIA plus, period. And then the person that would speak on those issues was often a cis white man, gay man, and that, okay, great. But they never really were called to acknowledge what was happening to women, what was happening to trans and non-binary people, what was happening to people of color through the context of their queerness and everything else that was going on. And I think that's really interesting because if you go back to our history, back at Stonewall, you can see that all those things, there were tensions there.
It's like the tensions have not been resolved. Even though we make progress, it's tempting to act like things are in the past that just simply are not. I think the thing about drag is that it creates these like stages and these microphones where people have been able to raise alternate discourses exactly like that. You go to a drag show and it is just for fun, but there also is information being talked about, like resources getting shared, even just a little bit.
Now, just hearing you say that, the juxtaposition for me is like before, like at one point, drag was seen as, obviously it's always been entertainment. So it was a type of entertainment that would also educate you and really speak out and rile you up and get you angry about whatever was happening, AIDS, Reagan, Bush, or whatever, what have you, wherever your political choices may lie. And so it went from that to, I think, for many, drag is supposed to be an escape from all those things.
Right.
But the world is so bad. We want our drag queens to just be an escape. I almost qualified it and kind of judged it, but we want our drag queens to just provide an escape.
Yeah.
We don't want them to engage and talk about what's going on in the world. And I thought that, wow, have we really reached that point of privilege where we can say,
yeah.
I mean, because it's not like we're really dealing with all of the troubles of the world during the day that much either. It's not until we come together as a community that the things start happening. So don't tell me that when you're sitting at your desk job, which I respect people who have desk jobs, but you're not like being an activist there unless your professional job is an activist. And if that's your job as an activist, then you want a drag it performer to be speaking about these issues.
Yeah,
and so
that's right.
I just thought that was really interesting that people would often say to me, can't you just sing a funny song and not talk about?
Because I do think drag is supposed to be an escape from the homophobia, an escape from the racism and the transphobia, and like a place where queer people, where femme people, where people of color like
are in power,
are important and in power and have a voice. But I don't think it's meant to be an escape from like reality to the degree that people with privilege don't ever need to feel bad at a drag show.
Well, that's how I took it when I would hear these sort of comments, and I'd be like, "What? That's so bizarre! Like, don't you want?"
But that's what they mean. That's what they mean. They don't want to be thinking at a drag show. That's different. Because a good escape is a good escape, but we don't need to give people who already have an out another one.
Yeah. And that's how I kind of view it today, is sort of almost as my responsibility, because I'm so dedicated to our community and the advancement of our community, whichever layer of the community we're focused on. And so there's so many things today that from my window, I can see them creeping through, whether it's legislation or mostly legislation and policies that are being passed sort of in the dark of night that people are not even aware of. And we have more information at our fingertips than ever.
And we have to be angry about the things that are happening because sometimes people really don't know about them. That's like,
I think there's more information now. They don't know about it. Yeah, they definitely don't know about it.
Yeah. So like the trans bills that have been happening this year.
Okay, so have you been watching Mrs. America on Hulu? Maybe not, but if you haven't, please do.
I just started it actually. I've heard such good things.
So it's around that time. Well, it's before that time. But first came during the civil rights era. The legal protections came into place based on race and some other religion and race, and so those were things that were implemented very early on. And then Ruth Bader Ginsburg was able to sort of start the ball in the women's equal rights movement to have gender discrimination added to the list of civil rights civil rights protections or protections for certain protected classes, I should say. And so I think it was 1967. It was in the 60s when this happened. And so that was women and gender or sex at that time, sex discrimination being deemed a civil rights violation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so then the next sort of wave of that ended up being basically queer people and LGBT people, and that didn't come into play until Obama. And so during the Obama administration, equal protections were put in workplaces for LGBTQIA plus people. It was really LGBT at that time people. And so that felt like an accomplishment. There was two sort of pieces that kind of connect to that, which is GENDA, which is the Gender Non Discrimination Act, and ENDA. And so these, we weren't able to get those bills passed, but we were able to get LGBT people added into the already existing.
Into Title VII, yeah.
Exactly. And so here at the couple years ago, Title VII had everybody. If you could not be fired from your job or not hired at a job, there could be no job discrimination based on who you are or what religion you are. Your sex, your gender expression, your age, your race, your nationality, your religion, all these different things. I think there's 7. I can't remember. And so that's very good. Then
it seems like necessary to live in a
why would that not be
free modern society?
Because we have protections for religious expression. That is allowed. That's being used against us. It's being used against the law, saying because I live in a place where my religion is able to be expressed in any way I want, where I want, in the workplace, then I'm going to, as a boss and employer, use my religion against the other people. And if I don't want to hire someone because they're gay or queer or trans or whatever, then that should be my right. And so that was what is in question. Yeah. People were fired, and then the Supreme Court was basically forced to hear these cases and hear the arguments on these cases, to go back and review and question whether they should remove these protections for our community. And so there's that. And then that just kind of, I believe, inspires sort of local state governments to sort of enact their own legislation and discriminatory policies. The first of which was in North Carolina with the bathroom bill, which ended up being basically copy and pasted to all these other states that want to enact these policies. And it feels like it's like a rash, and it is spreading. The most recent one that passed in Idaho, which was, I believe, on literally the night before Trans Day of Visibility this spring, was House Bill 500, which allows them to discriminate and basically ban all transgender people and gender nonconforming and non-binary people from participating in organized sports at any level, school sports or college sports, any organized sports that are kind of basically receive funding. Florida tried to copy that and enact it, and they were not successful. They'll probably try again, especially after the election. But other states are starting to copy that as well. And now you just have a sort of daisy chain of all these states, starting with many red states. South Dakota is another one, where they are, adopting these policies, these discriminatory policies that they see successfully passed in other states.
It's almost like as like words and identities about being trans about being gender nonconforming become more visible, it's like now for the first time there's going to be specific legislation that targets us and our community.
There's legislation being snuck through, and no one is really talking about these things, or not enough people certainly are talking about them. Every time I talk about them publicly, people are like, I had no idea. And they're like genuinely shocked that this is a thing. And I'm like, yeah, there's lots of this stuff happening, and they're just sneaking it by, and you don't even know. And so I think that's sort of our duty as drag performers, to kind of see these things that are important to us and, you know, turn on the lights.
What do you say to people who can't find interest in politics, who don't want to hear about it?
I used to be... I mean, look, to each their own. It's a free country in this, you know, argument. And so if there's people who can't, or who choose not to, or are unable for some reason to engage politically, I think that's just part of the deal, is that we as people who are fighting for freedom, we are people that are fighting for equality. I'm fighting for the right for you to not like me or not want to be engaged. And that's what it is. And it sucks for me, but I'm going to help you make your life better in some way. When it comes to race and racism, there's a difference between non-racist and anti-racism. Yeah. And so non just means that you are not engaging in it either way, and that you're turning a blind eye, but you actually will allow it to continue. Anti means that you will work actively against it to dismantle it and stop it. And those are two different things. Tolerance and being a non, misogynist, or a non-homophobe, or a non-racist was the way of the 80s and 90s, where you could be like, I'll tolerate, I'll just allow it, whatever, it's to each their own.
As long as I come at it with love, that's all I need. It's like, no, you gotta come at it with some energy to change things.
Yeah. And so those days for me are gone. Before this summer, last year, I had a thing of saying, I'm no longer allowing people to be just an ally. I think allyship is good, and it's an important step, and it's something, it's on the path. But allyship, in my opinion, when it comes to the LGBTQIA community, it's not a permanent state of being. It's sort of it's the ability to sort of check in and check out. It's the ability to say, I think you should have equal rights, and then, okay, I'm going back. I have nothing to do with that. I'm not a part of that community. And so it's the ability, by definition, to dismiss yourself when it gets too hard. And so last year, like the past couple of years, I've been really adjusting my tone around allyship. And if we want to call it allyship, fine, but we need to rebrand it. I want you to be as unbelievably politically and angrily queer as I am. Just as I am, by definition, a heterosexual woman, I'm still queer because I'm in the community. And the reason why I'm queer has less to do with who I may or may not sleep with, but more about what I care about. And the fact that I care about everyone politically and want our community to have equal rights. And so if you fit that definition, you're queer.
That's exactly what binds us together and kind of inspire us to like fight for things that matter for the world too, because we share not just factual things about us, but a belief system in a way.
It's encouraging and also saddening right now to me with everything that's happening in our country with regards to police brutality and racism. And there's certainly more people than ever who I believe are enlightened about a lot of these issues when it comes to race in America. Sort of recognizing racism is, we were taught to believe that racism only existed in individuals. Like racism, that guy is a racist because he's in the KKK and uses the N-word. that person's a racist. Now that's not good. So that's unacceptable. But they refused, or we were never taught to look at racism as just a system. It has nothing to do with individuals. It's a system.
How can drag artists better use our voices to make a difference
there is a
when
way.
It comes to Black lives?
These issues, yeah. I think, I think the bare minimum is nice. Is nice. I'll just say the bare minimum is nice, and the bare minimum is making a solitary statement, retweeting a meme. That's a way to not really. I mean, I think for the people who are doing it, it can seem scary to even just retweet a picture or a meme or something. It feels like because I've gotten the sense, and I've actually been privy to a few conversations with some drag race girls. I'm gonna say it, with some drag race queens, some white drag race queens who have been called out for not engaging in the conversation, the discourse that's happening right now, and there was one queen. I'm speaking in code, sort of. There was one queen, and that one queen
nice of you.
Called had a conversation with some other white queens from Drag Race, and basically told them outright, you not posting about this, we notice it. And this can't just be, Black people can't be the people who are being victimized and also responsible for changing the system. It can't just be us having to do all the work and then begging and pleading for a white queen to please acknowledge our pain. Like, we can't, that's messed up.
Yeah.
I posted something on social media saying, basically, it's important that we all participate in this dialogue. And I was surprised to see some of my followers. I got a whole bunch of unfollows, and that's fine.
Right.
I was surprised to see some of those followers challenging me and saying, you can't bully people into speaking out on, being an activist, and speaking out on.
I've seen that as
like,
well.
I'm the bully. I'm the bully?
Yeah, not at all.
But, and I didn't name any names. I didn't even tell anyone, you must do this or else. I said, can you please participate in this? This is problematic, and I thought that we were all in this together. Can you talk about this? And if you're not concerned about this, then what is your connection to this? And I think that is a very valid way of question. But I was met with people saying, you're bullying, you're contributing to cancel culture. If they can't speak out about it, then you shouldn't even bring it up. And like, all of a sudden they're telling me how I should feel and be reacting in a situation where if me and the person that's making that comment walk outside this house and a police officer is there, which one of us is more likely to be shot?
It's all about controlling your reactions and how you're allowed to talk to begin with. It is very troubling. So my approach is to amplify Black voices that are speaking about this issue, because there's nothing that I can say that is not already being said, and so not speaking over is very crucial. And so I use social media to try to just share a lot of information, share a lot of the great takes, and hopefully direct people. But at the same time, there's this challenge where if I don't actually say things in my own voice, then is that communicating to fans that they also should be silent? And I think it's a balance. We have to be engaged in more than just social media at the end of the day. That's where it becomes, the point. That's where it really matters. That's where the answer is. It's actually about the actions that you do. Not just raising money and posting it on social media, not that as an action, but like you're saying, thinking every day about how we can make shifts in the little things that we have power over, control over, to make more space for Black people, for people who are discriminated against. A safer place, and then to correct violence where we see it, to speak up consistently and in reality to the family members who say something troubling in an office scenario.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's even more. That could, I won't say more crucial, but that's equally as essential, I think, in when it comes to white folks in this country and being able to access areas that we will never be able to access. Because I often wonder, like, is this something that white households ever have to talk about?
Exactly. Right. It depends on the household. I
Yeah.
feel I grew up with hippies, so we talked about it when I was a little kid. I was actually talking to Johnny about this time when I was like 5 years old, and like I remember my mom like calling out someone being racist in my school environment to me, and like we came back home and she talked about like how those kinds of assumptions about people of color are not good things, and really broke it down. And I've seen a couple stories recently, like I saw Reese Witherspoon or something tweeted about having to talk about these issues with her child at the table because they've entered the news. And as much as it's not necessary to focus on how hard it is for a white family to be talking about these issues, I think it is striking to remember that like people can just ignore these, and they do.
And I think that makes them feel better in a way. That's a coping mechanism, and it can make them feel better. I think the scary thing is, and like once you like if we acknowledge that racism is a system that different people get different things out of it, and that certain people are disadvantaged by that system. There's less opportunities available to them by that system, and by the same token, on the flip side, there's more opportunities available to other people in that system, and they benefit from that system whether they participate in it or not. If we acknowledge that, then I imagine, and I'm not projecting, but I imagine that if I were a part of a system like that, and then I turned to dismantle it, then it could be scary for me. How do I fit in to society if we completely change the rules of who's inherently beautiful and who gets the job first and who's not going to be shot by the cops or whatever? I think that could be on a subconscious level a scary thing. The same way that I think that challenging the patriarchy is extremely necessary, and feminists have understood that for a long time, but we cannot really truly challenge and sort of dismantle the patriarchy without the participation of men. They're humans. We need all humans.
We do, and I think so. Maybe we can be advocates for how not scary it is. It's actually considering other people and being aware of how things work is not scary. It's actually kind of comforting.
It's empowering.
It's empowering. Being considerate of how other people's lives work that are not identical to yours is not scary. It's easier to know what you're supposed to do in the world if you're being thoughtful about other people's experiences. It's like it's a good thing.
That's what I thought life was.
And even acknowledging that you have been privileged is not a scary thing. You can appreciate positive things you've benefited from while still being critical of systems. You can learn how to use unfair advantages in positive ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key. That's definitely a key first step. I don't know where we're going to be, and I don't know where humanity is going to be in 100 years.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these issues, sexism, misogyny, racism, and all the other isms, I really would like to see this world where those people that are directly benefiting from those systems are aware of them and publicly acknowledge them, and publicly acknowledge that that there's always someone on the disadvantaged side of that or end of that system. And I think that's just a very human place to start. We're not saying you need to give all your money out the window, or go hurt yourself, or go join some group. Like, you don't have to do all this. Burn all your clothes and burn down your house. We're not saying you have to do all that. It just means be aware of it and understand, because if you were not aware of it, then it allows the other people who intend to do negative things the free will and a path to, I guess, while we are upholding these systems, like in terms of race, in America, if white people are not engaged, then they are upholding the system, and a system is like a tunnel or a passageway, and they're upholding the passageway that the people who are trying to do harm can freely pass between back and forth through that passageway to do their harm. That's a weird analogy, but that's
absolutely. It's literally the silence equals death idea. It's not closing your eyes to the issue and plugging your ears will ensure that it keeps happening.
And I think that's one of the things that they've been so they, meaning the powers that be, in this case the government and administration, these attacks on our communities that we talked about earlier, I always end up taking them very personally,
right?
Which is normal, I think, but it's not personal. It really is. I mean, it is personal, but it's bigger than personal. It is one little sort of notch in their pathway or their kind of plan towards erasing us. And so if they can erase us from all of these public spaces, that's essentially what they're doing, then they can, get what they're achieving, they can achieve their goal. And so that's what, now that you say that, I think that's really what it is. To fight that, we need to make sure that we are in public spaces, that we do hold office, that we are in every area that you have. If you've never seen a queer person or a drag queen doing a certain job or a certain skill or a certain place, then let's get them in there,
Exactly. Yeah, I think that would change things up. And then once we're there, not just becoming interested in our own personal careers, but maintaining that relationship with the idea of community and a passion for like a freer, just world. Because I do see some successful queer people lose sight of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But it is interesting that sometimes that one person who gets through the door, it can quickly, if we're not careful, go from, wow, we achieved our first Black president, to, oh, you were just a part of the club and nothing really changed. I'm not saying that about Obama. I'm saying any one person that breaks through, because they can lose sight in their connection if they're alone in the room or the situation or the field or the profession. Yeah. If they're alone, then they are basically surrounded by everything that has been working against us for so long, and they forget about the rest of us.
So that speaks to how useless like individuals are, really. Like, it's all about the community. None of us
individuals
are,
really purely symbolic. Yeah. No. Not to take away from pioneers, but I think pioneers certainly have a greater historical significance than they do actual in the moment, because unless they're able to usher in a tidal wave,
That's and that's the thing, using those to fuel continued action, because the tidal wave only exists if other people get involved.
It's true, girl.
Yeah.
This week, I was quite discouraged by all of these things, because it really does feel like every morning.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they asked me, again, how I was feeling, and I was in the mindset of, and I have been, and I might return to the mindset of, God, this is a lot. I can't take it, and I don't know what to do, sort of thing. But right now, I'm in the mindset of, damn, that's horrible, but bring it on.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so hopefully I can stay more in that mindset. And I think if we're in that mindset, then we know that there is a moment past all of this that we will be able to enjoy together.
That's right. I think, and that's all you need is to keep thinking and talking about this stuff. Is just some belief that we can do this, especially together.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We're starting together. Well, hopefully when we return to being able to travel and fly, we'll be able to take conversations like these on the road and talk to people. I was really excited to really kind of get started with all that stuff. But we'll do it in the way that we can.
We're gonna try to keep talking to people one way or another, and we'll do it in our own virtual way.
I just got a really good idea. Yeah, I just got a good idea that we'll talk. I'll call you about it. I really loved having this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm so thankful.
It feels so
for your brilliant mind as always. So love you.
I love you too. All right, honey. I gotta go. We'll talk soon.
Okay, talk soon. Bye, my angel.
I can't.